provided health care, government provided jobs. None of that works. Government can't provide anything because they have nothing. All government has is what it takes from the private sector. But when it takes money away from Peter and pays Paul, it undermines both Peter and Paul, and it destroys the economy. You know, it's like trying to give yourself a blood transfusion from your right arm to your left arm, and you spill half the blood on the floor. It's not efficient. We need market forces, we need market dynamics, and nobody in the Senate understands that. And I think in Connecticut we have a unique opportunity to send a real Republican to Washington. And we got somebody named Chris Dodd who is so unpopular that just about anybody can beat him. And so we have an opportunity. We don't want to send, another, Democrat in Republican clothing to Congress because we think he has a chance to win. We can send a real free market Republican like a Ronald Reagan or Barry Goldwater in that image that wants to dismantle the government, that wants to shrink government, not just promise tax cuts. Tax cuts are great, I'm all for them. But we can't cut taxes unless we cut spending, because we have to pay for government, one way or the other. If we just keep spending and cut taxes, then we get more inflation and bigger deficits, and that's actually worse. So if we can shrink government and re-empower the free market, I understand that things are going to have to get worse before they get better. But it's not that bad. If we just stop buying stuff for a while, we don't have to keep borrowing money from China or Japan or Saudi Arabia to buy things. We got plenty of stuff, right? We got to make more stuff. And that's going to require savings and investment in capital, and none of that's going to come from government. All of that comes from private initiative and the free market. And so if we get the government out of this, and we can restore sound money, if we can get an independent Federal Reserve with the guts to set interest rates where they need to be, or allow the market to set interest rates, and stop force-feeding cheap credit into the economy, and suckering, average Americans into buying things on credit cards, and, all this reckless borrowing and spending. It didn't happen by accident, and it's not a fault of capitalism. It's all because the government force-fed the cheap credit into the economy and then guaranteed all the creditors against loss. If we stop doing that, if we stop distorting the market will function. It's going to be painful. Right? There's no quick fix. The problem for the politicians is they have no stomach for this. They would rather trade some short-term gain for long-term pain. But we can't keep making that mistake, because the long-term pain keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger the more we do this. Every time we try to fight off a recession with government stimulus, we guarantee a bigger recession a few years down the line. And then if we fight that off with even bigger stimulus, we make it worse and worse until we eventually destroy the economy because we overdose on stimulus. We have runaway inflation. We have interest rates going through the roof. We have inflation that will, make the 1970s, look like a Sunday school picnic. I mean, we can't do this to ourselves. We have to start facing reality, understanding where we went wrong and what we have to do differently. And we need to elect congressmen and senators that understand what the role of the federal government is and what it's not supposed to do. And people that will actually respect the Constitution and the very limited powers that are actually given to the federal government in the Constitution. The powers are few and limited. The Constitution is just a few pages long. Yet they're doing all sorts of things that are not allowed by the Constitution. So I want to go to the Senate and try to get the congressmen to appreciate the oath that they take and the other senators, and to educate them, to stand on the Senate floor, like I'm doing right here, and speak until I can't talk anymore, and try to stop what's happening. Try to stop this agenda from moving through Congress, and try to make sure that other senators and other representatives can see my election, and we can get other candidates in other states that will run because of me, and we can make sure that Barack Obama not only loses, but loses in a landslide. And we need to replace the entire Congress with people who understand these problems, who are committed to solving them, and who don't want to stay in Congress forever. We need actual private citizens, like the Founding Fathers envisioned. I'm a businessman, I understand how to run a business. We need people in Congress who are in the free market so they understand how much damage the government is doing. These guys write these rules. Chris Dodd has never had to live with any of the regulations that he writes. He's exempt. He's like that nobility. Anyway, I can see that I'm running out of time. I want to take a few questions, but I appreciate your support. If you want to look into my campaign, I have a website, which is schiffforsenate.com. I just opened up my headquarters last week. In fact, when is the opening party?
On the 17th.
On the 17th, we're having a kickoff event. And if anybody is interested in coming by and meeting some of the members of the campaign team and asking me questions specifically at that event, you're welcome to come. What is the address?
It's on the website, but it's 130 Old Gate Lane in Milford.
In Milford. Anyways, anyone have any questions in the front row?
Do you ever get passionate when you speak?
Sometimes.
No, I was just watching on Fox yesterday. They said that the government stimulus package created 160,000 jobs. And of course, they were all in the government.
Yeah, well, the reason that governments like to create jobs is because politicians can always point to the jobs that are created by the stimulus. But what no one understands is that for every job they create, they destroy a job that you don't see. Because the government doesn't have any resources. They have to take it from the private sector. So what jobs are being destroyed to create a government job? But the thing is, when you let the private sector create jobs, it's done efficiently. Because it's done based on profits and losses. And so we get efficient jobs. Because we don't want jobs just so we can work. Right? I mean, everyone in the Soviet Union had a job. All the slaves had jobs. I mean, big deal. We don't want jobs. We want what we can buy with the income we get from jobs, and we want the productivity associated with jobs. So we don't want government just make-work programs. We want real productive jobs, and they don't come from government. And so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The politicians love it because they take credit for creating this job, and no one points out the jobs that were destroyed in the process.
I heard about you quite a while back, and there's a rumor going around, and you need to squash it if it's not true, that you never were a registered voter until you decided to run. That you had never voted in America in your life until you decided to become
That's
a
not
citizen.
true.
I figured that, but...
Well, I haven't voted recently. I hadn't voted in the state of Connecticut. I moved to Connecticut about 5 years ago. I mean, I voted often in my life. I've never voted Democrat. I voted Republican and I voted Libertarian. Those were the two parties I voted for. But yeah, recently I just, I wasn't very enthusiastic about the choices I had to vote for. I did try to vote in the last election because I was working as an economic advisor for Ron Paul, and I was very much in favor of his candidacy, and I actually missed the deadline to register. So I didn't actually get to vote for him in the primary, but I wasn't going to register, I wasn't going to go vote for John McCain. I couldn't do that. I mean, I couldn't in conscience vote for somebody who interrupted his campaign to vote for the TARP bailout. I mean, so I couldn't do that. There's no way I could vote for Obama. So it was, what was the point? I didn't know too much about the local politics going on. But, I remember, a long time ago I heard a quote, I don't remember who said it, but it was that if you can't find anybody worth voting for, you have an obligation to run. And so that's what I'm doing. And I want to give people a choice. A lot of times people hold their nose. They vote for the lesser of two evils. I don't like doing that. I just don't like participating in it. But if there's someone worth voting for, then I go out and vote.
You might want to address that when you get out on the campaign.
Yeah, people always
it's
exaggerate.
around.
People
It's
always
around.
exaggerate things.
Yeah, but that's a bad thing to be around. You should.
I mean, there are a lot of people out there. I want to get a lot of people who aren't voting to vote because now there's something to vote for instead of something to vote against. And there's a lot of people that I think would be Republicans if the Republican Party hadn't sold out its principles. I mean, if we actually have Republicans who really want to shrink government, the problem is you send someone to the government and they like it and they want to stay there. And so they want to increase power, they want to get along with the leadership. I don't want to get along with anybody. I want to change the leadership. And there's nothing that they're going to do to try to change that. So I have a real reason for going to Congress. I don't need to be senator. I don't need the power. I'm already out there. I already have a business that's very successful. People know me. I don't see how I personally gain from being a senator, other than if I can do the right thing, if I can help turn this country around and avoid the disaster that I know is coming. If I can do that, then fantastic. And that's the only reason I'm running.
How do you feel about states' rights of nullification, and do you think it's something that could work?
I think it'd be cool if I was running for governor. That might be my platform. I mean, I think that most of what the federal government does is unconstitutional, and there's very few. I don't think there's any state governors that are willing to stand up to the federal government and try to, stop it. But look, this Connecticut state government is a disaster in and of itself. So I don't expect. I mean, look at all the money that the state of Connecticut is spending. I mean, the first thing that Connecticut should do is get its own house in order. We just raised taxes. We need to lower taxes. I mean, the main reason when I came back